Please welcome to the stage Rivard of Politico and our esteemed panel.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I get the crack, too.
Yeah.
What's
Give you
cozy? No, you've got one in a minute.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We'll go down the couch. I'm Rivard. I'm a reporter at Politico. I cover environment and energy in the Northeast. This is Charlene Lake. She's the Chief Sustainability Officer and Vice President for Corporate Responsibility and ESG at AT&T. We have Kathy Baughman McLeod, who's the founding and former director of the Rock Resilience Center, and Dr. Galen Treuer, who's the Climate Technology and Economic Innovation official in Miami-Dade County. I think the relationship we have up here is Kathy and Galen have both worked on resiliency, Galen in Florida, and of course, a lot of people use phones in Florida and other things that AT&T sells. So, we're going to talk a little bit about extreme weather. To me, I've lived in California, I've lived in the Northeast. Extreme weather really hit home for me during the remnants of Hurricane Ida. Killed 30 people very quickly in New Jersey, a state that I cover, and several more in New York, another state that I cover. I wanted to start with Kathy, who works a lot with extreme heat and other extreme weather. Sort of talk about what's going on right now. What are we seeing? And what can you tell us about how the issues are seen in this country?
Well, maybe I could ask everybody in the audience to raise their hand if they've been a little too hot in the last, say, 90 days. Anybody? It's hot and hotter, and we're feeling it everywhere. And it's taking a toll, and it's taking a toll in so many ways. It cost the US economy $100 billion in worker productivity losses alone in 2020, and that number will rise to $300 billion by 2030. And so, of course, that loss is not equally borne. 18% of that loss is disproportionately borne by Black and Hispanic workers in the South of the US. And so that's just one indicator. Our health, our infrastructure, we need a new plan for how we're going to live with this heat. And what does that mean? And not just to understand the cost, but also understand the opportunities. And then being realistic about how hot it is and what it means for supply chains, transportation, airplanes, all the things that we do quite normally. It's those normal patterns we have, they're changing. And we feel it in some ways, but in other parts of the country and other parts of the world where we're so dependent on natural resources, workforces, supply chain, and our globalized economy, it's something we really need to think about. And then, this is not the uplifting part of the talk, I promise you. Then there is the interplay of the hurricane that knocks down the power and the phone lines. And then you have no air conditioning. And so there are lots of things that we need to better understand, but there are lots of solutions and lots of great investments that we can do to protect people. And so it's a story of concern and reality, but also lots of opportunities for us to invest in different ways of doing things and thinking about solutions like nature-based solutions. Nature is the most cost-effective way for us to address climate. Mm-hmm. And on the adaptation side, of course, we have some other business on the mitigation side. So yeah, lots to talk about.
Yeah, after Ida, I talked to a number of governors across the state about climate disasters, and some of them said we need a new playbook. Have you seen anything sort of successful working, during the recent extreme heat events? Yes,
there are lots of evidence-based solutions that work. So thinking about how we do our early warning systems, how do people get plenty of warning on heat? Do they know what to do when it happens? Mm-hmm. And when you think about insurance for climate, we think about assets, and with heat, it's about the human body. And so what are the things that humans need to do to protect themselves? And social cohesion and community are one of the biggest indicators of surviving disaster. And so building that knowledge base and knowing what to do or what not to do when a heat wave is coming, all of that exists, and we just need to get it fully integrated into public policy and practice. And in Florida, and I lived and worked in Florida for many years in the government and nonprofits, and there's a culture of preparedness and prevention for hurricanes. We know what to do when a Category 3 is coming. I know just what to do. We need the same thing for extreme heat. And so naming heat waves, categorizing heat waves, those are all strong things in a playbook.
Charlene, tell me a little bit about what AT&T is thinking about extreme weather and how the company is sort of grappling with it.
Yeah, well, thanks, Ryan. I want to say thanks to Concordia for hosting this important topic. Extreme weather does affect infrastructure companies, and we're not an exception to that. You know, it affects our employees, and it affects our central offices where we house our critical equipment, our cell towers. And so we're constantly updating our equipment. We're investing in new generators and rectifiers and batteries and floodgates. One of the things that we're doing that is really important is we're incorporating forward-looking data into our decisions. So we started working with Argonne National Labs, the Department of Energy's Argonne National Labs, a few years ago, and we asked them to develop new climate data off of climate models to project what are the probabilities of severe weather impacting us in different regions at least 30 years in advance. And so before that, really what was accessible was data that was a 10-day weather forecast and historical weather data. So we started in the Southeast states because they're very important and obviously very vulnerable. Now we have data across the 48 contiguous states. We have precipitation, inland flooding, coastal flooding, heat, a variety of different pieces of data. And it is helping us make smarter decisions. We've taken the data and we've overlaid it onto our maintenance and onto our planning systems. And so now we know how to prioritize our assets, how to prioritize our capital. We understand, you know, where do we concentrate our generators? Where do we invest in the floodgates? And so it's so important to do that, and we're so focused on resiliency because millions of people depend on our network to thrive in the digital world. And when it comes to disasters, it's not just thriving. The first thing that people want to do is call for help, right? Second thing they want to do is call for their loved ones, right? So that's why we're so focused on resiliency.
I remember one of the first natural disasters I covered. You know, power was out, but I was still tweeting with my phone, which was, I really think it was on AT&T at the time. Doctor, you know, I'm in New York. We've seen, you know, Hurricane Sandy. We've seen Ida. I was in Southern California. We see sea level rise affecting things there. But Miami-Dade is like a whole other thing. Tell me what's going on down there.
Well, I'm from Miami-Dade County, and we are super vulnerable. We know that, and we're preparing. We're very invested in that preparation. So our Office of Resilience has about 25 people in it right now. And I even sit outside of it. I left the Office of Resilience and am in economic development because it's just so important. And it is really our economic future, which is exciting. And some of the things that we're doing around heat is that this year, for the first time, we have we've announced a heat season. And so that went in and builds on top of our hurricane preparation season. And so when we have the season, we have a big announcement, and we go out into the community with an ag campaign saying, what can you do? And what you want to do, this is straight from FEMA, you want to have a plan. You want to have some kind of a kit. So you have a hurricane kit, but you can also have a heat kit. And then you want to have people that you can call, and they tend to be the people that are closest to you. We know that those are the people that you trust. And we're also trying to put Jane Gilbert, our Chief Heat Officer, out there so people know that that guidance is there. But I can tell you, I don't have a landline. I only have a cell phone, and I do have that list of people that I know that I can go to in case of a crisis.
And are you seeing these efforts replicated elsewhere? Should they be? I mean, I think of Phoenix immediately as a place that probably needs a heat plant if they don't. What do you see?
No, I mean, I think Phoenix is working on their heat work as well. They have a chief heat officer, and their heat challenges are a little different. And that's what's really important. And so we're also working with academics and with the National Weather Service to adjust when do we need to do a heat warning. This year we actually lowered the threshold because we hadn't had a warning in years, and given the year that we have had dozens of warnings. And we're constantly talking with others. One of the things that we do in South Florida is we have the Southeast Florida Regional Climate Compact. It's been a group of 4 counties working together for over 14 years. I think this will be the 15th year, and we, for example, set a unified sea level rise, right? So we're all gonna plan with the same projections, and we're doing the same thing with Inflation Reduction Act dollars, and around heat too, we share best practices.
And if anybody hasn't been following sea level rise projections, that's pretty important, because I've seen same city with like 3 different projections for, you know, different jurisdictions in the same government. It's amazing.
Yeah, you have to build up to the same level, and the public and the private need to build together, because if you build one up here and one there, the water passes through.
Yeah. You know, and Charlene, you know, I've covered, power utility, energy utilities. I haven't thought a whole lot about telecom utilities preparedness. Help me understand that and sort of how you work with governments for sort of public-private partnerships, and everybody else sort of weigh in too. But let's start with AT&T.
Yeah, so public-private partnerships are super important. And the way we think of it, there's 2 really main reasons. One is, and Kathy, I think you mentioned this, we can't really be resilient independently, right? We can't be resilient in a vacuum. We need our communities to be resilient too, so we have to work with others. The other reason is climate solutions really need a mix of expertise, and so both of those reasons are why when we got our data from Argonne National Labs, we actually began working with FEMA, and so FEMA and Argonne and AT&T created the Climate Risk and Resiliency Portal. And so now organizations can actually build their own resiliency plans. And that would have never come together had there not been a public-private partnership, because Argonne obviously had these, you know, some of the world's greatest climate scientists had the science expertise. You know, we had the network that gave the blueprint that allowed them to focus. We funded the data. We gave the data to FEMA. FEMA actually funded the website development, and then their scale is able to get it out to communities. So, you know, those kinds of partnerships are absolutely critical, because we can't do this by ourselves.
Right. What are you seeing?
Well, I'm seeing all over, one of the things we don't talk a lot about, we talk about it with flood and with hurricane, but with heat, how much does it cost to have a heat wave? How much does it cost to recover from one or to get ready for one? And what sort of economic impacts do people have where they need economic support? And we've seen all sorts of tools and practices around other climate hazards, but we don't have that around heat. And so in terms of a public-private partnership, the insurance industry is playing a role in understanding what the risks of heat are, and then thinking about what are the ways that people can be paid when, and this is for people most and disproportionately impacted, how can they keep their economic agency and position while still working and in the face of this heat. And so there's the insurance side, but there's also just the new technologies. You know, we're going to have to wear different clothes. So you're wearing maybe there's wool in your coat, and there's some pads in the shoulder, and I mean, it's hot. It's hot, and that's our standard, what we're wearing. So I think the fabrics need to change. People who work outside are already wearing cooling vests so that your core body temperature can be kept down. What are the other things? We've got to have sustainable cooling. So I think the world needs 3 billion more air conditioners in the next, I think it's to 2030. And so we can't use what we've got because of the waste heat and because of the source of the power. And so lots of innovation and technology, but also then the community has to be there to understand and co-create and help deliver the result. And the community is the workforce, and the community is the supply chain. So we cannot do this in silos.
I remember once I complained about the heat, and somebody said, well, you know, it used to get cold and that killed people, but heat never did, and that's certainly not true anymore. So tell me, what's going on in Florida?
I mean, heat is the silent killer, right?
It's the number one.
Number one.
It is the number one.
So in Florida, if we talk about public-private partnerships, I think one of the areas we need to think about is regulation.
Yeah.
So in Miami-Dade County, we have a large agricultural sector, and those people are 35 times more likely to have a negative heat impact on the job. 35. That is a lot. And we have to work with the farmers so that they can protect those folks. Because we can't just come in and tell them what to do. We might drive them out of business. We don't want to do that. And we have to somehow put some of the decision-making power into the hands of those farm workers. One of the issues is that they may be getting paid by the bushel, you know, something like that. And so they maybe feel forced economically to make these dangerous choices, right? And the farmer's like, well, you know, what? I can give them water, you know, and we definitely need that, and they need breaks. But we also need to make sure it's economically viable. So that's one of the things that we could do with insurers is maybe they can put some money in the hands of these workers if there is a shutdown, right?
Yeah, or it's too hot to work and their health.
Exactly, yeah, and that's true with construction, which is major.
Yeah.
And that issue is global.
Kathy?
I just wanted to point out, I talked about disproportionate impact, but women are disproportionately impacted by extreme heat. So we are physiologically impacted differently and more, but also economically and culturally. And so yes, in the US, but also in other countries, women are responsible to go get the water, and when the water is further away and there's less of it, you have to go further. The clothes that we wear, the shifts, when men and women are working the same shifts, now it's too hot. The men can work a later shift, the women have to take care of their kids, and so they're missing an entire shift. So it's another way that heat is impacting their income, and that means their agency, and that means that economic opportunities are lost for advancing communities because, and we just have to really understand the quantification of this, and I think it's important to keep talking about how does it impact and then understand that economically and then tailor those interventions and public-private partnerships to address it, to keep people earning and growing.
Charlene?
Yeah, well, you know, I want to go back to actually the data that we have put out into the public, because I think it's important for this audience to know that it is available to everybody. It is free on this portal. It can be used by urban planners, by engineers, by just a regular citizen who's interested in resiliency. It is non-technical. Obviously, it has a technical genesis, but it is non-technical. It is offered in visualization. It's dynamically downscaled, so you can search by zip code, you can search by locale. Importantly, we have just added heat index to this.
Fabulous.
So it has drought, it has precipitation, it has wildfire, wind. Heat index will be adding the flooding later this fall. So what's really important about this is it's actionable. So you can actually go in and you can make decisions for your organization. Cities can look at where the rainfall is and understand that they can make infrastructure changes now, zoning changes now. We can decide to where best to locate schools, where best to locate hospitals so they're not in the future flood zones. So again, it's really important for us all to make resiliency plans because we are interdependent. We can't do this solo. We're all working together. So I'd encourage you to go check it out.
It's a great resource.
Do a search for Climber.
Yeah, how do they find it? Yeah, tell them.
Yeah, do a search for Climber, CLIMRR, and it will pop up. It's a cooperation with us and Argonne and FEMA, great partners.
And you go on there, and what do you go to when you're on there? You click on what, and what's your favorite
I clicked
feature?
on my house, absolutely.
Okay.
I put my zip code in to see where the future flooding. I'm okay for now.
Okay.
I'm okay for now, and I think my kids are.
Okay.
So.
Well,
We'll see about my grandkids.
something to check out and another thing to be worried about, but informed worry. Thank you all. Appreciate your time. Any last thoughts?
No, thank you all.
Cool.
Come visit Miami.
Well, I would just leave with a thought that there are lots of things that we can do about this and lots of things that we can invest in, and we have the ingenuity. Humans are, take no offense, we're feeble in many ways as we take on big complex challenges, but we adapt like crazy. And so we can take on these challenges and find ways forward. We have to do it with good data, we have to do it with goodwill, we have to do it with public, private, and nonprofit and civil society, but we can do it. We want to leave you with some, can do. Yes, we can.
Be optimistic.
Yes.
Do come to Miami and we will show you what we're doing.
Yeah.
We're putting things in the ground and we're working with our communities very seriously and with these partners.
Amen.
Thank you all.
All right.